Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Spiritual Rebels and Misfits podcast. We are really excited that you're here to get weird with us.
And we're going to have all kinds of, absurd ideas, playing around with magnificent guests. And we're just going to go to places you always wanted to go. But, you couldn't tell mom and dad how you felt about aliens, about channeling. You couldn't say fuck.
I'm Ashley Bradley. I am a mom. I am an intuitive business coach. I'm a business psychic and a channel.
And I am James Lester. I am an open homosexual. I'm a speaker, a writer. I am a member of the recovery community, and I am a queer activist.
And after you listen today, we would love it if you would follow us in one of the podcast places, Spotify, Apple, just to name a few. Subscribe, leave us a review. It helps new people find what we've created. And we thank you for listening. Let's do this. I know. We can't take ourselves seriously with that intro. We just crack up listening every time. It's ridiculous. Hi.
Oh, am I allowed to speak now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Hi. Welcome to our show.
Well, sometimes we just get too caught up in laughing about things that we start a few minutes late. And so sometimes we need to just be get our shit together and just do it,
You sent me a lot of mixed messages in our relationships. I got to talk to you about the other day about how I need to say more what's on my mind and be more unfiltered. And now I get shushed right before the show. I think you're
that was Krista. That came from Krista. So
do you agree with it or not?
We'll ask our audience. Do you think put a 1 if you think James gives it to you straight, put a 2 if you feel like he needs to share more of his mind because you notice at times that he holds back or he's trying to, be kind of appropriate or right about something. We'll ask everybody.
Is this a coach thing, by the way, with the 1 and the 2s?
No, it's a fucking algorithm thing to get people to comment. Right. Tell us where you're at. Where's everybody watching tonight? Tell us what city you're from, who's here, say hello to us. Yeah, it's an algorithm thing so that more people see it. Yeah. Just go with it. Mm-hmm.
I'm always just going with it. Apparently not enough going with it, but I feel like I just go with it. So let's get into today and this week.
Okay.
How have you been?
I have been good. And I don't even know. I feel like all the days sometimes blend together, It just feels like time is just kind of collapsing on itself and speeding up. Or I don't know if it's motherhood or just the timeline speeding up or both. Maybe both. Yeah.
You just got real deep with that shit.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is a deep talk, I think. I think we're going to get really deep with it today.
Are we? Going to go real deep?
Mm-hmm.
Real deep?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. This is going to be our guest, we always like to kind of warn our guests, although I think that we would really like to be what did you say, the spiritual in between two ferns at one point and so we actually want to see if we could push limits with the Pope, obviously we're reaching high, one day if somebody gives us a platform and they're let's give these to a reality show and get them in front of the Dalai Lama, that we could really just kind of lean in and just see what happens,
I'm all about thinking big too, my love, but I just really don't see the Dalai Lama nor the Pope joining us on a Friday evening to talk about.
Well, there's going to be less podcasts to be on once we ascend to New Earth. So maybe ours is just one of the 5D ones. And they're up there with us and they're just these are the people. Yeah. To talk to you about this.
I like how you keep trying to rein me in right now, and then you keep saying weirder shit. So what are we doing here? Are we doing weirder, or are we doing more?
Both. Yeah.
So all right, let's talk about the week. You kind of had an awesome week, yeah?
I don't want to talk about. I mean, are you just trying to see about the business and stuff like that? What are you?
This is why I'm gay. I cannot win either way with you.
Well, I want things sometimes just come up naturally. And I'm that's starting to feel a little bit forced. But he's trying to set me up to talk about my business universe launch. But I just want to talk about it when it comes up, whether it's now or whether it's at the end. But I did launch, the business universe, which is for the modern day healers, the astrologers, the coaches, the readers. And so, I've been doing a lot there. It's been a soft launch. Now it's like a real open, come join
Hard
us and
launch.
be in here. But anyway, yes, we'll talk. I feel like I just want to talk about this topic. Like, I don't really want to dance around it too much. I just want to get to it.
Let's get to it then.
Let's get to it. Have you ever been put under like hypnosis or experienced a session with a hypnotist or done self-hypnosis? I don't think so, right?
Nope. Newbie.
Really? Oh, that might be our next adventure that we go on. We're going on like to do the float tanks tomorrow as an adventure. And so we could like, talk about it and compare notes next week, I suppose. But I have only experienced hypnosis under like up until recently. So I've done self-hypnosis with the natural childbirth stuff, the hypno babies. And then I feel like before that, it was like you would just see it at fairs, and, the guys like getting the people to like, do stupid shit or to cluck like chicken. So I'm kind of curious as well, like what people's views are on hypnosis, if they've experienced it, if they just do like YouTube self-hypnosis stuff, or if they just have that view. I do think that's going to be a good thing to get into with Craig is like, why do we use it? Like, why does it work? But Krista, because I started to get really interested in hypnosis after reading all of that Dolores Cannon stuff that I've been obsessed with. And I was talking to Krista about it and saying like, yeah, I want to be put under hypnosis and see what I access, just curious about it for the channeling. And so Krista, who's been our guest many times, was like, I'm actually going to school to be a hypnotist and I'm getting trained in this. So she's like, if you come and meet me in person, then we can do it. So I've done it very briefly. I feel like the longest was maybe like 15 minutes. I haven't done like something like with Dolores Cannon or, where I imagine it might be like a 2-hour kind of thing where they're going into that trance state. I do want to really do that soon. But yeah, I think it's like, it was really interesting just to be put under briefly and to see that I actually went under very quickly. And I channeled in that state as well. And it was definitely a whole interesting experience. So yeah.
So did you have recollection of it and by the way, I think that like that old school, like thinking of like, like, oh, you cluck like a chicken or do something stupid. I think it's really like progressed, at least like the people that I know.
Yeah.
I hear a lot of
know.
People. Yeah. People are like hip to it now. So I think it's definitely it's not like I Love Lucy anymore. I think people have a lot of respect for the hypnotherapy and, I mean, Dolores Cannon, is that, I know I listened to the book with you and we're on the way to Sedona, but is that considered hypnotherapy or is that past life regression she's doing?
Well, we can ask Craig his opinion when he comes in because Craig Mackay, hopefully I'm saying your last name right, Craig, but he's a coach and a hypnotist. And so we'll let him maybe explain the finer details, but they are using hypnosis techniques to get people into a specific state where they're accessing the information. So same with like Journey of Souls, which we love. I know Craig is like an avid reader of all these books as well. And that is all basically accessed during hypnosis sessions. And for both of those people, they weren't actually trying to access that information. They were trying to go in and sort of fix a challenge or a problem that was happening for the person like in this life. And then basically they were just accessing these different parts of their mind, but they kind of stumbled upon it. Like they talk about that. But yeah, I think it's when we get more into the trance state, and I think like Craig could probably talk to us about the different states, because the light state that I was in, I mean, when I did hypnobirthing and I did self-hypnosis, it was so that I would have my eyes open, so that I was like participating and I was able to get myself into a certain state, give myself like certain cues and like be active and there and like present birthing a child. Right. And then,
I still, we've talked about it many times, but I just, girl, for you to do that fully aware and so with no drugs, like.
And I will say that because Sage came in less than 3 hours, my youngest, and the woman said, that is the calmest like natural birth that I've ever seen in my life. Literally, I was like leaning over to her and saying, okay, I'm in transition now, which means like you're 7 to 10. I was like, I'm in transition now. I was like, okay, it's time. You can check me again. And she's like, okay, yeah, you're right. It's time. Like, I was like, it was very interesting. The first one, it was very calm to where they didn't try to send me home and I had the baby a couple hours later. But the second one was like fucking calm. I'm proud of that. And I feel like that's totally hypno babies and self-hypnosis. And then, I haven't been in that trance state. When I went into a lighter state of hypnosis, I for the most part remembered things that were said. I don't remember all the details, but the trance state, I think, is what I'm like really curious about, but also kind of like wanting to do, I think, alongside somebody else that knows what they're doing,
So
but yeah.
just real quick, because we kind of got away from it. So during your new experience with Krista, were you present for that? Because maybe I have a total false perception of like hypnotherapy, but like a lot of it's like you're not present for what's going on, but you remember all of that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that, again, Craig could kind of tell us what state I was in, but I was just kind of in this relaxed state, and it kind of it felt like kind of like in between sleep and awake. And my eyes were closed and I was just kind of like chilling in this, one of those infinity kind of whatever, those chairs that lay back. And I mean, I for the most part remembered it, and it was I don't know. It was just basically relaxed, and it didn't really feel like much of anything other than like that I was really, I guess, maybe seeing more things or feeling more things. And I don't know. It was pretty normal. It was pretty quick. But also I think with doing readings and channeling already, that what's normal and for me might not be normal for other people. There's a lot of things that I do that other people might be like, wow, this is weird. Yeah.
That was a tour de force recounting of your hypnotherapy session.
Well, it was literally like 15 minutes, and it's we haven't really dove into it. Literally, it was probably not like the work Craig does. It was like, we're gonna put you under, and like you're gonna fucking channel, like, and you're going to see who's here, and like the entity was already like showing up like before, because I am channeling already, and so I'm just like, my heart was going, and I was just like, okay, like I think it's time. And she's like, okay, let's just go and do this. That she basically just brought me under, and she kind of walked me through the process of like letting one entity step forward at time and speak through me and separating. And so and then I was like, someone else is here. No, we're not done. There's a woman that's stepping forward. And so it was very quick. I mean, to do all of that in like 15 minutes, it was like very rapid. Yeah.
Did you get to smoke before or during that experience?
No, because I was driving. Yeah. So I'm still very...
I know how you are about that, and good for you. But I try to live vicariously through you. So I'm like, girl, I'm always telling you, girl, you need to smoke more. And you're like, no, I'm responsible.
Well, it just depends. Like, I feel like it's a substance, and it's legal, but like, so is like, I would never like have a beer. I was very much afraid of DUIs, like, especially in California, even before. So I don't fuck with that, Okay. You're a model citizen. We get it. So I don't think people would think that. Most people. I mean, I'm not really going for that, but that, yeah, that's like one of my lines,
Love your new background.
Thanks. Yeah, I know you're jealous of it. No, he is, because I told him that I would give him these eye decals, and then I just never got around to giving it to him. And then I was like, you know what? I fucking need these myself, because we painted this wall. So I needed to redo it from lightning bolts to eyes. And so here we are. But anyway, we need to pull in Craig, because we're just going to go off on a million tangents if we don't bring him in. It's going to get lost here. So what do you think? You ready for this, Craig? All right. Hi, Craig.
Hello. Hi, Ashley. Hi, James.
Hello.
What a fascinating conversation, by the way.
You're still here, so we didn't scare you away. That's like the test.
He was trying to keep it tame today, Craig.
So introduce what you do, because I know it's like it's hypno coaching, it's some hypnotherapy. Will you just tell people what you do and who you are?
Absolutely. My name's Craig Mackay. I'm originally from Scotland, but I live in Nashville, Tennessee now, and I'm a hypnotist and a coach. I help people work with their subconscious mind to increase the things they want in their life and let go of the things that they don't. That's it in a nutshell.
So it's Mackay,
Mackay.
not Mackay. 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 That's a lot better than Mackay. Because I think about
I'm
South
so
Park.
used to Mackay, I don't even correct people anymore. So I'm very used to it.
That's like Crystal yesterday. Last time she was like, "It's just what people want." So that's what people want, right,
I'm
Craig?
just going to give people what they want. Yeah. So I'm really curious, like, what do you think hypnosis is, or how do you describe it to people? Because I think that a lot of us probably have just like, maybe people seen it on TV or they have like a misunderstanding. Like, how do you introduce it to people?
Excellent question, because when I was hearing you talk, there's moments I'm thinking, oh, there's a great opportunity to speak. One of the to go speak to something James said a little while ago. Hypnosis actually isn't a loss of awareness. It's not.
Okay. See?
It's actually a heightening of awareness.
Mm.
And actually, hypnosis is often associated with relaxation, but it can be absolutely devoid of any relaxation whatsoever. Like a highly anxious state is a hypnotic state, but it's definitely not relaxing. Hypnosis is essentially where we're dissociating or disconnecting from where we are and what's happening right now, and we're going into either like something past remembered that when we piece it together in our mind, our nervous system experiences it now. So we go, oh shit, I remember that thing, but it's not happening. So it's like reconstructed. Or when we have, say, anxiety of the future or excitement or motivation for the future, our mind is leaving the present, putting together something in our mind, and then when we imagine it fires in our system and we feel those emotions. So the way to put it is that hypnosis is mindfulness. Here's a great example. The only time we're not in a form of trance is when we're 100% mindfully present. And it's really fucking interesting that's a big, there's the first one, yay, that we've, that there's a rising industry now, mindfulness, right? Why? Because people aren't fucking present.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like, oh, things are cool now. I'm chilling on the beach somewhere in the Caribbean, but next week I got this thing to deal with. So we're no longer on the beach there. We're thinking, oh God, I got to deal with this thing. Or people might be okay where they are, but they're thinking, did you see that thing on the news? Or, whatever it is. So hypnosis is essentially where we're leaving the present and having an experience of something that's not here right now. So that's very broad. But also hypnosis is, another way to put it, is where it's the bypassing of the critical faculty of the mind, meaning that part of our mind that is typically more critical in its thinking gets the activity of that part of the brain lessens during the hypnotic experience, so that we're more in the experience than the logic. That's essentially, in a loose roundabout way, how to explain it. But it's not always relaxing. And it's not always formally created. We dip in and out of trances all of the time. And it was actually, you mentioned channeling before. I think channelings, and when someone does mediumship or even healing, I think those to me are trance states, because they're not really coming through the conscious mind. Other parts of the brain are active, but part of you is still present to witness it. Otherwise, nobody's there to speak. One of the old situations with channeling, which interests me, though, is there are some people that seem to go to a level where they have no conscious recollection of it. But to me, that's rare. And I've done quite a lot of past life regressions with people, and that's never happened in my experience, but that doesn't mean it's not real. But most of the time, we are still there to witness it. It's just coming from a different part of the mind. There's a big speech there.
No, I love it. And like, I feel like whenever I talk to you, like, my mind actually just wants to ponder it, because I'm just like, yeah, like that's like usually my reaction when I talk to you. This is a semi like selfish question, but you have seen me do readings before. Do you notice, can you tell the state that people go into? Like, is there something that I might not be aware that I'm doing, that I could basically be like, oh yeah, like I am putting myself into a trance state?
Well, often when it comes to trance states, there's different ways to measure those. And often people will talk about brainwave states. But one of the things that people don't often mention is that we are never in just one brainwave state. Like, we've got the most active one is like beta. And then when we're starting to focus, but the beginnings of trance, we have alpha. And then we've got theta, and then we've got delta. Delta is typically when we're sleeping, or it's possible, and some people have experienced these delta, which are really deep, slow brain waves. That's normally deep sleep, but also some people through meditation have reached that. But when people talk about trance, they'll often talk about these brainwave states, but our brain is often doing multiple things at the same time. So to answer your question, it's hard for me to tell. There are other ways to gauge trance depth. There are. And it's almost one of those things where I learned them, but then I learned to pay, and other hypnotists listening to this might not like me saying this here, but
we don't fucking care. But you're our guest.
But a lot of people talk about trance depth and the importance of it. And I can almost hear what the thoughts are going to be from James here when I say this. That some people come in and say, "Oh, I need super deep." That's what I'm just one of those people. I can't tell you why, but I'm all about the depth, you know. And I'm like, and it's funny when people come in and say that, and I know what your mind's thinking. But then it's funny because I'll listen to them and I'll go, "Yeah, that's funny. Based on what? Like based on what?" And they're like, "Oh, well, I just know it's whatever's going on with me is like really difficult, and we just have to really get super deep to deal with it." And I'm like, I'm listening and going, how do they know? Could be completely wrong. Could be completely wrong. And also, a lot of things can actually be done, not just in the formal hypnosis that we might think of with the eyes closed and someone relaxed in a chair. A lot of things can be done interactively in what appears to not be hypnosis. Because what I love about hypnosis is the subconscious, which is most of our mind. That's the autopilot part. And by the way, most of the time we're in autopilot. Most of the time. Like, how often do we really pay attention to brushing our teeth? How often do we really pay attention in how to walk across the room? Maybe if we've had too much to drink, that becomes central focus. Or some other substances. Yeah, for New York, by the way. I'm sure you heard that in the news.
Yes, that's awesome.
Very surprising, but there you go. It's progressive. There you go. But a lot of everything that we've learned to do, initially, we had to build the conscious pattern. Meaning when you learn to drive, or if you're learning another language, for instance, that it's almost like there is no file for it in your brain. So you have to manually create it. And after you've done it enough, it becomes autopilot. So kind of like over time, more and more things that we've learned to do, walk, talk, and otherwise, brush your teeth, all of that stuff, take a shower, all of that becomes just autopilot. Meaning you could become aware of it. But normally our mind is using those moments to just think about what I got to do later, or when you're driving, what do we got to do when we get there? What time is it? All of that stuff. So our mind is more and more an autopilot, and the part that holds all of those autopilot programs is called our subconscious mind. Mm-hmm. So, and any time that we're using willpower, and actually I'll take this off the wall just for some perspective here. I have this picture which might not come good over the camera. So here's an iceberg in the ocean. Forgive the black parts. It was a misprint. So I've got this. So up here, this is our conscious mind. This is the part of us that's rational, reasonable, and logical. And this gets so much attention in the modern day. But this part is really fucking weak, really. Then there's this part, which is the subconscious, which is about 90%. And here, if we get into the spirituality part, I think the ocean then is the soul and, the universe and all of that part. So the reason I became a hypnotist is because why does this and this feel so separate? Because this part's the intermediary. So I became a hypnotist because the access between this and the rest of us comes through this piece, where we often just think it's logic that does it. If logic was really, and we love, information has become such a currency, like there's information on everything. People could find out pretty quickly online, or find someone who could tell them or show them like how to be in great shape, how to have wonderful finances, all of this stuff. So we love information, but why isn't information getting it done? Why is that? Because this other part doesn't give a fuck about information. It doesn't give doesn't. So that subconscious part of the mind, normally when we're using willpower, we're trying to use that piece at the top to try and force the other part to do something it doesn't want to do. When someone wants to quit smoking, or a lot of things with addictions, there's multiple pieces to that, but it's almost like the logical mind isn't looking at that going, yeah, I want to be an addict, that's great. It's not. It might say, I don't want this, but then the subconscious goes, that's great, however. And then it's very difficult. Same with eating. So I'm like, oh, I don't want that. I shouldn't eat that cupcake. But another part goes, that's great that you don't want to, however. And it can win, but it's a very difficult thing to keep up willpower, and that's what willpower is. So yeah, there's another piece for you.
Well, if anyone does want to ask questions, like I see that there's people that are watching here that are like loving what you're saying right now, but we definitely always encourage questions and curiosities to come from the people that are watching. James, like I want to leave space for you because I feel like I could just ask Craig like a million curious questions today. Like, what are you curious about?
I'm good with you doing that. But I mean, like just listening to you, Craig, like you're just such a fountain of information, but I love that you're connecting, but
does your subconscious give a fuck about the information?
I'm trying to ask him a question. She's on one today, Craig. I apologize for my spiritual wife. She's just out of hand today. But I was going to say that I really love that you, the subconscious and the soul and kind of the battle in between, like we're re-examining the untethered soul. I know that's like kind of like a very base book for everyone now, but like with the continuous conversation between our mind running our life and our soul actually experiencing the human experience. And I love that you bring in there that the subconscious is the part, and I don't know if you're familiar, or of course you are, but overnight manifestations, I do a lot of those at night to try to pump my self-conscious with certain things. How do you feel about those? And are you familiar with what I'm talking about? Those overnight manifestations that are just to like send like, waves of like abundance or positive thinking or any of that kind of stuff to the subconscious?
Yes, well, I think that the subconscious is experiential. I am familiar with that, and what I would say is that if the subconscious isn't in alignment with it, then it doesn't happen. But the subconscious, its language is different, and this is important. The subconscious's primary language is imagination and emotion. So that is almost like where people would talk about being, so it's almost like if your state of being isn't in alignment with what you want to manifest, then that's where I think the problems come in. So a lot of times people might think the thought of that thing that they want to connect to. And often I look at body language, like if someone comes in and they have a goal, and it might be, I don't know, weight loss. And I'll say, why do you want to lose weight? And they might be like, no, because it'd be nice. And I go, then I know their conscious mind wants that, but the subconscious is like, not really. Now, the truth is they might want that goal, but they're not really in touch with the real why. Because every goal, really, every goal is a state of being. Every goal, it comes down to that. So we attach a state of being to the goal. So it's not about when I manifest that thing, it's about what is the feeling when I manifest that thing. But often that's the part that's missing. And you'll hear it with people when they talk about the goals, like that example I gave. You can, if it's kind of like, oh, well, I guess I have to make, win $1 million. I mean, then you're like, well, that's maybe then not for you. But so often that why is such a big piece. So
I love your lazy, like American impression.
I got better ones.
More of those as you give examples. Loving that. Yeah. So we do have a few questions that people are asking that I want to pull in here. I always like to look at things as like the yin yang, masculine, feminine. So it does sound like from what you're saying that the conscious is more of the masculine, the unconscious is more of the feminine. Like if we were to look at it like that.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Loving that. Because you also said that the feminine is the more powerful, right? And so I feel like that totally goes with everything that I'm really trying to wake up in people. So confirmation bias. Yeah. For me. So are there certain tools that you use to access the subconscious mind? And what is the process that you use? Anything you could share with Mallory here?
There are many different ways to do it. Hypnosis is one of them. NLP is another one, which stands for neuro-linguistic programming, and that was created, I think it was in the 70s, if I remember right, and it was based on 3 different modalities, where they looked at 3 different modalities and really distilled it down to the essence of why they worked, and then they kind of created this whole language or structure and set of tools about then how you use the essence of those things in the most effective, most rapid way. So NLP is kind of, how would I get into that? That's one way you can do it. That's where you would see a practitioner and you would do techniques together and there'd be conversational elements of it together. That's one thing. Another thing is there's things like, what do you call that again? The truth is there's so many. Hypnosis is another one. Why is my brain gone blank on that? There's so many of them actually.
Your subconscious doesn't want to talk about it.
It doesn't. It's like, stay with the hypnotist.
It's like, fucking just pay me. And that note will drop you links. That's because you should just pay him to tell you and to do it with you. I know that you told me that sometimes people think you're just going to go in and fix things, right? That you're just like, oh, let's just like hire somebody. I'm just going to lay here and do nothing and you're going to fix it. Like, what's the misunderstanding that's happening there?
Sorry, I was reading the question underneath. What was your question, Ashley?
Well, let's go with this one and then we can go with Ricky's comment. Yeah. How long can someone be under the state of hypnosis?
See, this is an example under a state of hypnosis. Under what?
But I do value the question because when you're
I do, but it's one of those things like when that kind of almost people have some fears about. They're almost like being put under. All hypnosis is self-hypnosis. We could be in a hypnotic state all day. We could if we're really, 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 really motivated for something, or we really want a certain goal, we're almost in a state of hypnosis because we're kind of skipping over where we are and we're dwelling in our perception of how that thing will be. So the truth is, much of the time we could be in a state of hypnosis. Here's an example. If someone really fucking hates their job, then if they're in their job for 8 hours, they're probably in hypnosis for 8 hours because they're sitting there thinking what they're going to do when they go on vacation, what they do when they go home, what they're going to do on the weekend, all of that stuff. So the truth is, it's a difficult question to answer. Most of the time, I think we are in various forms of hypnosis because the only time we're not is when we're 100% present.
Yes.
That's the only time that we're really not in some form of hypnosis. But if it's formal hypnosis in a chair, well, some of those, like the Dolores Cannon sessions from the books, they sound like they lasted hours. So it could be a few minutes, it could be hours. If it's in a formal setting, I don't think there's really necessarily a limit to that. But in our everyday life, I think most of the time we are in some form of it. The thing that makes it weird is the label. So hypnosis is really an altered state of consciousness. But our consciousness alters all day, every day by itself, with or without a practitioner. There's a straight answer for you.
Well, it brings up also that when we're watching TV or a movie that we are in a hypnotic state. And so I think that's why when it starts to get problematic, when we're looking at conditioning and looking at how we might be open for suggestion or, tuned into lack and scarcity and things like that through advertisements, like any thoughts on that? Like, I really want to get your opinion.
Yep. Well, the subconscious mind is really wired for metaphor. That's why we love stories. So that's how we can have a profound impact on someone, but very indirectly by linking whatever we want to convey to them through a story. And that's almost like, those children's stories that seem to always have a moral to them. The children they want the child to learn something, but it's not about them. But when they're listening to it, they're like reacting to everything and they are learning something from that story, even though it's not about them. So it's a less confrontational way to create change. And it engages the imagination, which is and also the emotions, which are the primary languages of the subconscious mind. So movies and TV are an interesting thing because, again, if they're stimulating the imagination, because if we're imagining that, that's real and we're imagining what that feels like, then what happens is our subconscious is associating with it. We're putting ourselves in that movie. So that is stimulating our subconscious mind. And it can bring about beliefs. Like if a lot of movies are really, really negative, then it can make, kind of almost poison people's view of the world or humanity. Same like the news. The news is programmed, I think, to stimulate that adrenal or fight or flight response by showing you just the right images with just the right, headlines, because that then gets that situation. And then we want to go talk to someone. Oh, did you see that thing? So it's like looking at it and saying that those things really do condition the mind, because beliefs are, here, I'll finish it with this, that beliefs are created by the decisions we make or the decisions others make for us in the presence of heightened emotion or through repetition. Both will do it. So it's almost,
repetition.
yes.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, for instance, when people have had, really negative events in their life, but also really positive ones, when all that emotion comes up, like the subconscious is almost saying, for efficiency's sake, what can we decide here so we don't have to think about this in the future? Right? So it's almost like if someone fails a test and they're like, oh, what does this mean? What does this mean? And a parent or themselves says, oh, well, I guess I'm just stupid. Then the mind goes, oh, well, it makes sense now. So where the emotion is, it softens the mind so it can be reshaped. And then unfortunately, that decision that comes from us or from others does reshape the subconscious into a belief. Because why is that? Because our mind loves efficiency. It's really fucking hard to be conscious all the time. So that's why we're mostly not. So we have a view of ourselves, a view of the world, view of others, and it can change, but it's always running in the background. And so it's that idea that it's for efficiency's sake. Because if you woke up in the morning every day and everything was reset to zero and you had to figure out, who am I? How do I feel about everything? How do I feel about my apartment? How do I feel about the people in my life? What food do I like? What clothes do everything? You'd be exhausted, absolutely exhausted. So our mind just kind of creates all of these things that become normal. And then over time, we look at them sometimes and go, how the fuck did this happen? Because it became normal. Because it became normal. So I don't know where we started, but that's where we ended.
No, it's perfect. Would you agree? Because I know that sometimes people are like, oh, it's so mysterious. What's in my subconscious? And I read somewhere before that like your life is essentially a printout of what's in your subconscious, and everything that's around you and what your life looks like, how you feel about your life is what your subconscious has created. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, well, the subconscious is recording through all of the senses all of the time, but we're only aware of a very small percentage of it. So people can get scared of it because they're aware of the idea that there's so much that gets absorbed in the subconscious that they're not even aware of. And that can almost be like, people are often scared that there's, deep, dark things in there. There might be, but there's also a lot of positive stuff. And there's a great deal of stuff that's very just vanilla and neutral. Great deal of it. So it's like our mind is typically drawn towards those things that have a high emotional significance, and especially those ones that are around survival, because that's the big one in the mind. So it's looking at and saying that is kind of our life is a collection of all of that stuff. Sure.
Yeah, I always notice that when I'm listening to Dolores Cannon, that she's like, yeah, typically it's pretty boring when we go into past lives. So she'll like fast forward them to like an important day when something significant happened to kind of like get on with it.
Yeah, and that's also goes back to what you were mentioning before. Brian Weiss and Michael Newton, wasn't the intention, but they were following the feeling. Because the idea is that when a feeling is active in your system, your mind organizes your memories based upon the emotional content. So that's how, if you're in a good experience, it's easier to remember other good experiences. When you're in a negative experience, like if you have an argument with someone, it's so much easier in that moment to remember other times that they've pissed you off, So our mind, it's almost like when something's triggered, that's when people talk about spirals, like getting out of bed on the wrong side or must have stubbed their toe this morning. Because once the emotion's active, it lights up like that whole chain in the brain of memories where they felt that way. But it can also work for the positive too. So, like for instance, like Michael Newton or Brian Weiss, they might have connected to the feeling that the person was there to change, and then it's activating it in the brain. But I believe that it can go past that too, where it's almost like that there is a connection that goes beyond that life, then it will go there. But here's a controversial thing I want to share. Whether that past life for that person is real or not, it actually doesn't matter, because I think sometimes, controversial here, sometimes I think the subconscious is making up a story, a movie, or a situation that will perfectly allow that person to unravel what the problem is for them. Does that mean that's always what's happening? No, I do believe in past lives. I do. But do I believe it's always that? Particularly if someone's always a king or a pharaoh or something, you're like, well, it must have been a lot.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah.
But if every life is like this, you're like, well, maybe.
Well, there. I mean, actually, what was Dolores Cannon talking about though in the one where it's the
Well, she was saying that like sometimes people are just very common and normal, and she's like, I feel like if people were going to fabricate something or do something, they would make themselves crazy. They would make themselves a king or make themselves something grand. And she was saying that oftentimes it's just like really like normal run of the mill stuff that people are accessing. And so to her, she feels like she would kind of look for signs of if it sounded legitimate. So I appreciate that. I see what you're saying as well. And I'm curious, like, would you say as well, like, I think some views of intuition are that like, that we can't really we don't know how we know things that are in the subconscious. We just know that it's there. And so I could see that oftentimes intuition is just accessing the unconscious, like some kind of abstract thought or some kind of memory. And maybe it is even from some fucking past lives and you just don't know how you know it. I do believe that as well. Do you feel like that's connected? Intuition and subconscious?
I do, but because I think that beyond our five senses, I think that we are hooked into like all vibrational data around us, and I think that distance doesn't matter at all. So I do think that part of us I think it's almost like radio waves, where someone who's a psychic can kind of tune into that, but people that can't kind of don't know that it exists, or doubt that it exists. I mean, so I think that what happens there is that someone is able, that has an ability in their mind to kind of allow that information to get out from the subconscious into their conscious mind. Because I think everyone's receiving it to some various degrees in the subconscious. I do. But that subconscious processes millions and millions and millions of pieces of information every single second. Whereas the conscious is maybe, 5 to 9 pieces of information at a time. Like, it's really focused for our survival. Where if we were really present to all of that information, and I think some mental health disorders point to that, where people are just so overwhelmed. It's almost like that filter isn't there. So like just bombarded with like, the world is so overwhelming because they can't focus, because that information that's supposed to kind of stay behind the curtain and be or under the surface is kind of all coming up. And I think there's another piece I wanted to share with you about that too. Another piece that's interesting too is when people say most communication is not verbal, what's happening when two people are connecting is their subconsciouses are exchanging a giant amount of information. So sometimes the intuitive part, like when we almost can tell how someone feels, even though they haven't said something, is that part of us can read that information. All of our subconsciouses can read the information, but it's about, can we be conscious of it? So some of those people that are really good at analyzing body language and all that, they're just picking up on some of this stuff that we're giving out all the time. So some of those intuitive moments can just be that there's this huge amount of information being exchanged from mind to mind in a conversation when people are connected. And it's the more that people are aware of that and kind of tap into that, the more powerful it becomes. There's another piece to it.
Interesting. Yeah, I do feel like to pull through information that I have to shut off the critical mind. And so like oftentimes I'll go into that state where I can't be thinking about it. I can't be pausing, and I'll talk fast to just try to like pull it through as quickly as possible and not allow my own filters to come in. Cause I think that's when we second guess, or we're like, well, is this right? Or how do I know that? And I was teaching people how do you bring through your own intuition in business? And I was talking about spaciousness to receive, because I do think that if we are trying to figure it out or be like, I need to do this, like I need to come up with a genius idea right now, tell me like what you think about this. I kind of call it like set it and forget it, like where you set the intention, where you know that you're wanting to pull in some kind of an idea or solution for something, and then go on a walk and don't think about it. Go do something else. Cause that's why I feel like those brilliant ideas come when you're in the shower or just not doing something related to it. What do you know about that? I'm sure more than I do.
I completely agree with that, what you're saying there. So when someone's in the shower, they're going into autopilot, meaning that they're not really, their conscious mind is kind of switching off and they're just in the experience. Because like I was saying before, they already know how to, wash their hair, all that stuff. They already know that. They're not having to consciously pay attention to it. So it's the more that we kind of zone out, that it allows space then for something new to come in. And another part of that too is about the most important piece is the why. A big enough why will overcome the lack of a how. A weak why will be destroyed in the pursuit of the how. So that's really important. So if we almost kind of have a dream, but then we think, then immediately that critical mind comes in and says, I don't know how we're going to do that. If the why is not strong enough, it's over. So it's almost about having that big enough why. And the example I'll give for that is I was watching a documentary recently about when the US decided to put people on the moon, and they said, we've got no fucking idea how we'll do it, but we have to do it because of that bullshit with the Soviet Union, right? So they said, it's not like, let's try and do that. It's like, we have to. And people were saying, but we don't know how to. And they go, well, we're going to have to fucking figure that out. So it's like the idea that when your goal is a must, then we'll figure out the how. When it's dependent on the how, then we're screwed. And most things that were created of significance by human beings, like, I mean, an example was the cell phone. Initially, that's crazy. Everything begins as a thought, everything. And to get quantum about it, it's real somewhere else first. And the more that we connect vibrationally and emotionally to that, the more that we can make that thing real. So it's almost like the goal, as soon as we can emotionally connect to it, it's real somewhere. Because our system, as soon as your neurology can feel it, it's reacting to something. So it's already real somewhere. The goal is, though, and this is where faith comes in, someone who's not feeling that will say, that's bullshit. You shouldn't believe in that. But if you can feel it, it's real on one level. So it's about looking at it and saying, if we connect to that, almost what I was saying before about how the brain organizes information based on the emotion, the more we can connect to the energy of the goal, it actually then, our lens and our filters in our mind are then actually tuned into it. So we will get the how. But the only two important pieces about getting a goal, the why and the next tiny step. And if the next tiny step's overwhelming, we have to go back again and get a smaller one. Commonly what happens, people, when they have a goal, they're excited and they lose connection to the emotional essence of why they wanted it, and they get lost in the steps. And then they're like, why am I losing motivation? Nobody wants to take steps for no reason. If I said to both of you, I want you to climb Mount Everest, but meanwhile, I guarantee there's absolutely nothing in it for you. Now, why are you not motivated? That's what we end up doing with our goals. We forget, well, why am I climbing Everest again? What's up there for me? So those are key things. When it's real in our mind and we can emotionally connect to it, I believe it is real somewhere. And then we just need to keep going back to the next actionable step and just loop that until the end. There's another long statement.
According to Dolores Cannon, it's primarily the aliens that are sending us the ideas and the direction. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, okay.
You don't have to answer that directly, but you can
I'll give you a different answer to that.
Yeah.
An alien refers to the kind of the body or the form that something takes. But if there's a soul, what's an alien? So if you're looking at it and saying that if you have intelligent life elsewhere that is sufficiently developed that it can house a soul, then does a human being have a specific soul, or is the soul not linked to the container that it's in? Like I wouldn't say look at this earth water. If we find water somewhere else, it's still water. It's on a different planet. It might be in a different location than we'd find it here. But I look at it and think that, let me also put it this way then. Do I think that intelligent life from elsewhere is influencing us? Absolutely. That's where I think the religious texts came from, in my opinion. That I think that big G, God, I think probably doesn't speak, but that's probably the center of a number of very large circles of creation that went outward. And something more advanced than us has probably communicated with us and shaped the way that things are for us. But is it the one at the beginning? No. I don't think so. But I do think we've been profoundly influenced by what we would call alien life over the years. Profoundly. I think there's just too much that points that that's true. But people who are religious may say, well, look at the stuff that happened in the Bible. Why is everything coming down? If you're God, you could just appear. Why are you coming down from the sky and all that? And where's heaven? We've looked for it. We've gone up there and we haven't found it. Where's heaven? I think that's a dimensional thing. But very long answer to your question. I'm probably, pissed a few people off with that answer, but there we are.
I love that answer. I love that answer. Ashley, can I ask you a favor? Can you pull up Ricky's second question? Because I kind of have a question for you, Craig, about anxiety. Because Ricky
he did kind of address that, I think, towards the beginning. So that's why I was holding off. Yeah.
Yep. I would say the answer to that. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, James.
Well, he's asking because for those of us listening to the podcast that can't see it, he's saying, if someone's in the high anxiety, are they in hypnosis most of the time? But I was going to ask more specifically about, I have a lot of people referring to anxiety in their life. And for me, I used to have really bad anxiety, But I found that's when I just stay in that top part of my brain and I don't really get into subconscious or explore the soul. So what are your thoughts on like what really is the core cause of anxiety?
Anxiety to me is first and foremost masters of self-hypnosis. So to answer this question, yes, he's in hypnosis most of the time. But typically it can be a number of different things. It's where somebody doubts their own skills or resources in a specific situation. So therefore they deem that situation is going to overwhelm them. Or another piece of it is that there's a glitch in their self-image. So it can be like saying that this person is going to react to me a certain way. Why? Because that's how I see myself. Like our worst fear is that somebody will confirm our deepest, darkest thought about ourselves. So we lead with that, like, oh no, like if I really think I'm not good enough and someone looks at me a certain way, then I'm like, oh, see, they know. Shit. They know it. Or what they say or they don't say. Like we know it. Oh no, they know it. Damn it. And it hurts because we've already decided it. So anxiety, it's also very creative, and it often comes from two of the most magical hypnotic induction words ever. What if? Here's those words. What if this happens? Then our mind then leaves the present to answer the question and says, well, what if it does? And it might be a negative thing. But then the goal is to say, what if we ask another one? Like say, what if I go to work tomorrow and the boss is angry at me? Great question. What if you go to work tomorrow and it's completely uneventful? And then even better, when someone has anxiety, they're typically not finishing the movie. And let me explain what I mean by that. If we take the situation they're anxious about and consider it like a movie on a movie screen, and imagine that in the middle of that movie, there's an intermission, almost like a theater show. So they'll create part one, which is almost like from where they are now to the peak point of discomfort. But then they don't finish the movie. So the mind is just kind of left stuck there in that worst piece. So the goal is to complete the movie and say, okay, so I go to work, and it's just an example at work. I go here and this happens. Great, then what? Oh, then I go home. Well, then what? Or like, what if I get on stage and people laugh at me? And so they're almost stuck in that peak moment about, dealing with the inner dialogue about why that is. Go, yeah, but then what? Oh, then it feels really uncomfortable. Go, well, then what? When I get off the stage, well, then what? Then I go home. So, well, then what? Then it's over. Oh, so pay attention to that part. Because it's almost like they're going through a movie and freeze framing the worst piece. And then when the mind isn't given something after that, then that's almost the ending. Like, oh my God, I die there. I just cease to exist, or I get trapped there forever in limbo. So it's almost like go past that point because it's rarely an ending. So it's almost like rather than get stuck in that piece, go past it. And also this, I think Tony Robbins, said this one, the quality of our life really comes down to the quality of the questions we ask of ourselves. An example, what if I really fuck that up? Versus, well, what if I really excel at that? Which one's true? What if I'm good enough? That feels different than what if I'm not good enough?
Right? That
Which
was
one's
such
right?
an amazing breakdown of anxiety there. Like, thank you so much for that.
So
You're
I
very
know
welcome.
we don't have a ton more time with you, Craig. I know we've already kept you longer than we said we would.
That's okay.
What should people contact you for? Like, what kinds of clients are you wanting to work with and call in today? And we'll drop some links for people to stay connected.
The most interesting things for me to work on that I enjoy is self-sabotage is great. That's where someone's self-image isn't allowing them to reach the level that they want to in different areas of their life. Anxiety too, because they're already great at hypnosis. And also self-esteem and self-confidence. Those are the things that I really enjoy working on.
And will you just fix it for them? Are they going to just like go there and you're going to fix it? Like, what would you say?
They're going to close their eyes. And then I'm going to reach in and I'm going to move some gears around, some wires, and it'll be fixed and they'll wake up and they'll cluck like a chicken for a while, walk like a duck, and then they'll speak in tongues for a while and then they'll be magically healed. No, no, we'll meet on Zoom, we'll have a conversation, and over the course of a few sessions, if they do their bit and I do my bit, we'll have profound change.
And so you do it virtually. Yeah, and it's virtual.
Yep.
Yes.
And it is a process to speak seriously about that. Typically, change isn't an event. Typically, patterns that people come in to work on have been established and reinforced over a long period of time. Doesn't mean they take a long time to change, but it means that, it is a bit of a process, a few sessions or so, to rewire those things. And it is an active thing. They don't sit and receive the change. We co-create the change. And all hypnosis is self-hypnosis. I'm just the guide.
I love that.
Fuck yes. Well, I appreciate you showing up and just dropping your brilliance on us and like putting up with all of our antics and silliness.
Dropping something. No expertise, but yeah, brilliance, but yeah, okay. Thank you.
I see, that's the thing that I don't think you see how much, like, because this and you're just like so used to hanging out with yourself and your thoughts, but other people are going to be like, wow, this is really super interesting. Wow. I'm going to think so many people are going to be thinking about so many things from this conversation. I guarantee you. So just a different perspective.
Even my wife hears all this stuff. She runs some patterns on me. It's interesting. So my gauge for what's crazy is when I look at her and say something and she's shocked. I'm like, oh shit, then this is really something crazy is happening right now. But yeah,
well, she hears you all the time too. So
and she'll use some of the questions I use.
I've gone too far.
Yeah, I've gone too far. What would you say to a client who said that, Craig? And you're like, ooh, we're going to do that, right? Is that where we're going? I'm going to be a mature adult now. Damn it. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Craig. We
pleasure.
appreciate you so much. Hopefully you'll come back and maybe one day we can like do some hypnosis stuff on people or on James or something like that. I don't know. We can get funky with it next time.
Sure. Sounds great.
Bye, Craig.
Thank you,
Craig.
Pleasure. Thank you so much.
I knew that you would love what Craig had to say. Because I'll be honest, Craig, you can still hear us. He's backstage. He's like, is Craig interesting enough to be the only guest? And I was like, fuck yeah. Like, Craig is super interesting. And he didn't know you, but I'm like, I think you would agree now. Craig holds his own. We could probably talk to Craig for 2 hours and we'd still be in awe wanting to talk to him more.
Definitely. I definitely agree 100%.
Is this like stirring up anything in you that you're going to hang on to or that you're going to do differently or maybe within the program and, people that you work with that you're going to bring in?
It's definitely a lot of food for thought or thought for food or whatever the fuck the saying that is. There's definitely a lot to think about, but it all resonated as very, very true. And my soul perked up as he was speaking. So that was like a lot. Like I'm going to have to re-listen to the whole thing to like process everything.
It's so much information. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I always feel like I just want to like ponder it. I feel like it's interesting that I always draw on like certain things that we do in coaching. I'm sure like the coaching modality that I use probably pulls from NLP and hypnosis and different things. And so it's interesting, like how he talks about even what I would call the inner critic and the what if, and like sometimes just learning like, oh, like some of these things that I'm doing have this like subconscious hypnosis connection. So I really love learning that. So next week is actually your birthday, your sobriety birthday.
It is years. Indeed, if I make it.
Yes. Well, of course you will. I would kill you first. You're not like
that's true.
You would know that. Yeah, so, yeah.
If I live to get to it, then because if I relapse, Ashley will kill me, and now this is evidence. Yes, it is.
And I kind of felt like a dick because I didn't ask you what topic you wanted on your sobriety birthday, that I kind of just planned one with this amazing astrologer. So I apologize I'll amends for that later. I'm sorry.
You're in a pushy mindset lately. It's fine, but I'm sure that she'll bring forth exactly everything that needs to be said.
What's needed. I am going to see, because she talks about working with asteroids on people's charts, and I had never heard of that before. So I'm wondering if maybe she might look at your chart. I'm going to throw that idea her way and just be like, oh, it's James's like sobriety birthday. Like, could have like a little podcast adventure.
I'm super excited to hear about that. I've never heard of that either. So it's going to be amazing. So I look forward to it.
Mm-hmm. And trying to think what else. We'll let you know. We're doing our float tank thing tomorrow. So we'll let you know how that goes. Maybe if you join our group, we'll let you know like right after how that went, because that's a new one. But I feel like I've heard that Joe Rogan from like the Joe Rogan podcast, like always talks about floating and things like that. So if you don't know, it's basically like sitting in, I guess there's 1,300, 1,200 pounds of salt that's actually dissolved in this water so that your body naturally floats on it and you go into this like sensory deprivation experience. And so I'm pretty excited. There's a part of me that wants to be like, well, what if this happens? Well, what if, like, see, like Craig was talking about.
Well, what could happen in there?
What if you don't have any fucking fears about this?
No.
Like nothing ever. Okay, good for you.
No. I thought
for
it was
you.
I thought it was a little weird. It's butt ass naked. Like I had like envisioned like a wetsuit. I was like, butt ass naked. All right.
Apparently,
okay.
yeah, I know.
There's some rules like no shaving like 6 hours beforehand, and like I have to shave like 3 times a day because I'm a hairy beast. So I'm like, okay, all right. So
I know there's a lot of things that we're trying to work through of like what to do, but no, like my brain, I do have that movie. I was like, what if this is like how the government, they realize I know too much about these galactic beings and they try to fucking trap me in this tank and it becomes like Indiana Jones and the water's just filling up. Like, what would I do? There's that crosses my mind. Or people that are just like, what if it feels like I'm trapped in there in this like fucking water coffin? I'm thinking,
what if I don't want to get out? Because that sounds like heaven to me, just like floating in a dark tank with some awesome music playing. Like I'm gonna be like, no, Ashley, like you need to pay for more. I'm not getting out, and I'm naked.
I think I'm gonna love it. And I have been practicing sensory like deprivation, other meditation. So we'll keep you posted. We'll let you know how it goes. And then Solange will drop a few links for my group, The Practical Mystic. So it's not just me in there anymore. Like Krista, who's a badass, is in there, like sharing spiritual, magical things. And Sarah, who teaches about like empaths in business. We have our astrology gal, Crystal, who's been a guest. So they're co-leading kind of slowly but surely. We're getting our shit together. It's mostly me that's sharing, but they're new to join the party over there. So I'll drop that link. I'll have Solange drop the Business Universe link that's in there for people that want to tap into that as a resource for the membership. But yeah, I think that's it. Anything else, darling?
I think that
we're complete.
We are complete and whole.
We're complete. Okay.
Yes.
All
right. Bye, y'all.